Do believe that we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Say What, or as it's correctly pronounced, Say What?
That's a better way to pronounce it.
Well, let's see your version, Mr. Criticism of that's a better way to pronounce it.
Say what?
That's a pretty good one. You have the eye squint going on. You got
You got to have the whole package.
the whole package. So it's about like
Absolutely, the whole
50% words and then 50% the eye squint of going, say what?
If you're going to have the show
Yeah.
where you bring on people that it's common, average, ordinary, incredibly fascinating people, there's going to be something they're going to say that one person's going to turn to the other one and go, say what?
There you go. And there'll be plenty of that on this show. I am so excited for the guest that we have on tonight, and we'll be getting to him in just a second. We're sort of just kind of stalling here, letting people get in, join the show. I see we already have Burning Monk in the chat, and I know you're disappointed and everything, but because we have such an amazing guest, I'm not going to be able to do my news monologue with my hot, funny, amazing funny takes.
Well, you see, a few minutes ago when you said that you're really excited about tonight's show, I thought it was because you decided to leave that weak monologue on the sidelines and not do one. That's why you were excited about the show. There would be no weak monologue on your part.
The monologue's coming back, and it's coming back in a big way. Next show, August 31st, not the 30th, August 31st, Friday from Las Vegas, Nevada. We will be doing a show. You're going to miss it. It's unfortunate that you won't be able to see that monologue, but there will be a hot fire monologue with fresh jokes from the news in the week, and it really is too bad. I know you'll be laughing somewhere.
But you have lined up a long-time 45, 50-year Las Vegas person that's going to, again, looks like an average, ordinary person, but they got an incredible story to tell about their 50 years in Las Vegas.
Yeah, we have lined it up-ish. I believe we're getting him. We'll see. And, basically it's a guy who's been out in Las Vegas. If you've ever been interested in any sort of Las Vegas history or anything like that, you're really, really going to love the show. I see Honest Gamblers here. Welcome, Honest Gambler, to the show. We have somebody from Las Vegas.
And who's going to be taking my place, as if anybody could take my place?
Not a lot of pressure on this person that's going to be taking your place, but it'll be my sister Gigi Terrell, who will be celebrating her 30th birthday that weekend.
From New York City?
From New York City, although
Okay.
I'm, that small little town, that small little borough of Manhattan that she's from. But it'll be her 30th birthday weekend in Las Vegas, so we got to find something to do. There's not a whole lot that she's going to be able to do while she's there, so
Okay.
she better come help me.
I'll be anxious to see the show.
Host this show, exactly. Real quick, Dad, have you heard? No, this is what I want to get into instead. This is what I want to get into right before we bring on our amazing guest that I'll introduce in a second. I've been asking everybody, people that watch the show are always getting in on this debate. And we usually don't get to it to the end, but is pizza pasta? It's a hot fire debate, one that you're dead wrong on, but it's a hot fire debate.
I tell you what, in lieu of the fact that I'm just as excited as you are to bring on Big Ron,
Yeah.
let's throw that on the sidelines and we'll worry about that later. If you want, I'll even go ahead and admit I'm wrong, and we'll end that debate just in the interest of spending as much time as we can with tonight's guest, who has told me a few stories that has me anxious to hear much more.
All right, there's your co-host, just moving it along for me. Kind of derailing what I was going to go into, but that's all right. We will get to that on another day, not next episode, because he won't be there, but someday. Not only, it's not enough for him to admit he's wrong. We got to get more than that. We got to really make him feel it. But anyways, let's get into our amazing guest that we have lined up. Like my dad said, on this show, we're looking for average, common, ordinary, but really fascinating people. Kind of the idea is just for me is like, hey, everybody's got a story, and this man has about 1,000 of them. So this guy was born in a rough steel mill town in Granite City, Illinois.
True.
Which, if you don't know, is a pretty rough area. And growing up there, you really got to fight for, hey, your survival almost, just how kind of rough it is. It's not exactly New York City or Manhattan.
I think he'll tell you, but Ron would say you quickly had to learn how to use your fist to survive.
There you go. And what did you say?
As a kid.
Yeah. It was a town where you said you got to be rough, tough.
Well, this is what Ron told me. Ron said you had to be rough, tough, hard to bluff, and used to hardships.
There you go. At 17, he signed up to be in the Marine Corps. Was originally stationed in Okinawa before at 18 years old, went over to Vietnam to be a reconnaissance scout. He spent his time, served his country in Vietnam, and was decorated for his service. After that, he moved back to the Illinois area and worked in convenience stores, ran movie theaters, eventually owned a nightclub for 11 years until it burned down, which we might get into. Like I said, there's almost too much here to get into on one show, just because, I'm going over his resume. It's unbelievable.
No question about it. Ron
Yeah.
also, when he first got back, worked in those steel mills.
That's right. I forgot about it. So worked in the steel mills, ran convenience stores. And by the way, these convenience stores were not in, like I said, Manhattan. These were convenience stores in basically the worst parts of the country at the time, still maybe today, but bad parts of the country.
Let's say they were challenged neighborhoods.
There you go. Challenged. He owned, not only did he own a nightclub, but he owned a non-union construction company in a very strong union town, which if anybody out there has ever dealt in union work, that would be almost as difficult as running that convenience store in the awful part of town. After that, Ron ran into a little bit of bad luck and was accused and convicted of major cocaine trafficking. During his trial for his arraignment of that whole deal, Ron left in the middle of the trial and went on lam. He was on the run for over a year. He was featured on America's Most Wanted 2 different times. After about a year or so, he was caught in Atlanta, Georgia, sentenced to 25 years in prison. Ron served 12 and a half of that, something I can ask him.
Ron will tell you when he comes out.
He'll tell you when he comes out. And after that, lived in community housing for about 9 years, and still to this day building his resume for his entire life. Go ahead.
I would say it a little bit differently, just so our viewers know. Ron did hard time in some of the worst penitentiaries the state of Illinois had to offer. They didn't send him to a country club. And Ron has been out of the free rent of the state of Illinois now for about 9.5 years. And we'll find out with all these things that Ron has done in his life. Something tells me he may not be finished yet.
Yeah.
But another thing just for our viewers to know, which you can get Ron to confirm when he comes on in a moment, that up until Ron was arrested and convicted for being a drug person, Ron had never committed a crime of any type. Ron had never so much as had a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to find out from him, how do you go from all of that life to such a huge jump?
You ever gotten a traffic ticket, by the way?
Oh my gosh.
Without further ado, the chat wants him. We're
Let's
sitting
bring
here
him out.
waiting
Let's
up time.
go.
Let's bring in Ron Goforth, everybody. Ron, coming in. Nope. Come around this way. If you can, just move the chair. That table is not going to break. This is what you get on Say What, everybody. This is high preparation. Seamless transition. Seamless. Ron, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
Looking fresh in the hat. That's all I gotta say. Wait till you see this hat, everybody. That's a hat I don't think I could pull off, Ron. By the way, Ron, everybody calls you Big Ron. Do you mind if I do the same?
Drew, I can't believe that you would even ask me a question like that coming from your family.
Yeah.
You know, being your dad is a good friend of mine and your uncle.
Yeah.
There's no problem in calling me Big Ron.
I was really hoping you were going to say that. I was scared if you were going to say, well, don't you dare call me Big Ron. How dare you?
Right.
Ron, there's honestly so much to talk about. Where do you want to start? I mean, I went over your resume. Where do you want to start, Ron?
Well, you know, it's hard to believe on where to start, but let's start with the first night they arrested me, which was over 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is when you got arrested originally for the cocaine dealing and everything else.
That is correct.
Okay.
They kicked my door in, used a battering ram to kick my door in, come to my bedroom, which I was sleeping, and pulled me out of bed, took me to the dining room, set me down, and began the search of the house. And obviously they found some cocaine and some money and whatever.
Which, by the way, real quick, I believe I have some pictures of that I can show these people. This is the house
That's the house that I was living in at the time that they used a battering ram to come in and do the search and make the arrest and take me to the Granite City Jail.
Do you remember what you were doing when they were at the time when they busted in? Like the moment they shoved the battering ram in, do you remember what you were doing?
Yeah, I was sleeping in a spare bedroom.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I was in that spare bedroom, and you know they're screaming police, police, you know, and everything, and so I just laid there till they come got me.
Wow.
You know.
Wow. So they come in, bust in. Now you were they arrested you because somebody in one under you had turned you in.
Another kid, and I won't mention his name at this time. Another kid that I had raised had been selling drugs, who had keys to my house and came and went as he pleased and whatever. Had got caught selling drugs. He made some undercover sells to an undercover police officer, and they arrested him, and he claimed that there was cocaine at my house and that I was his supplier. And so that gave him the right to get a search warrant and come serve that search warrant and take it from there. You know, they took me Granite City Police Department. They asked me if I had anything to say, basically, which at the time I had nothing to say.
And there's the your mug shots that they had gotten you with.
I believe that is, yes.
Yeah.
And so they kept me overnight. The next day took me to Madison County in Edwardsville, Illinois, and started the proceedings. And that was really kind of funny. They took me before the judge, before one of the judges, and set my bond at $750,000. Okay. Which means I had to put up $75,000 at the time cash to bond out. And so I didn't have the money as far as they were concerned, you know. So they took me back, and the next day my attorneys got another hearing for a bond reduction. And that was really kind of funny.
Yeah.
You know, the judge going through and all of his talking and everything, and he says, Mr. Goforth, tells the girl, this is off the record, Mr. Goforth, would you step up here? I'd like to talk to you. I said, all right. So I'm leaning up on the judge's bench, and he says, let me explain something to you. Anybody caught with as much cocaine as you got caught with can surely afford $75,000 to get out of jail. I said, Your Honor, there's no way I can argue with you. What you're saying is absolutely true. And, he leans back in his chair, and I said, but, you're not hearing the whole story. He says, now, what do you mean by that? I said, well, number one, I don't have $75,000. That's number one. So, we agree on that. But I'm going to tell you what I do have. I've got 75 friends with $1,000 apiece, and they're lining up right now. And he shakes his head around a little bit, and well, we'll see. Motion to reduce denied.
Yeah.
And so we pushed on from there. I was out on bond for somewhere between 3 and 4 years. I don't have the correct dates on it, on how long I was on bond.
Which is a long time generally, isn't it?
It's really long. I had a lot of people questioning that. I had at that time what I thought was 3 good attorneys, and still feel that way. Even though they lost my case, they done what they could do, I believe, at the time. But yes, 3 to 4 years is excessive to be out on bond.
Yeah.
On what all they done, filing motions and whatever, and so after the 3 or 4 years, we decided we're going to trial. Now there was some things done in trial that I didn't agree with, and that I felt was being a misuse of justice. That can be argued on either side of the fence.
Yeah.
Really. I could show some of the misuse of justice if they so decided, but anyway, we went to trial, and during my trial, they had several people testify. Naturally speaking, all the police officers and whatever, and it didn't take no brain surgeon to figure out that things weren't going very well for me.
You had felt like you were getting kind of railroaded in the whole thing, and
I did feel that way in a lot of ways, but it is what it is, and I don't hold any grudges against anybody or anything like that. But everybody testified, and then my defense team had people testify on my behalf. One of them being a bailiff in that courthouse, not in that court. Oh, but by the way, let me get started on this judge. The judge that tried my case, okay, I was his first criminal case when he tried my case.
I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I don't know either.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, it wasn't real good.
Yeah, I guess it turned out to be a bad thing. But
he made it very clear that he would put up with no nonsense, no attorney tricks, no. As a matter of fact, he jumped up and said, "Bailiff, just lock that door over there. We're not going to have anybody in this courtroom until we're going to play it by the book, strictly by the book." And he was just being rough and tough and all that, Now at this point, I'm still cocky. I really don't think I'm going to jail, when he's talking all this crap. And so anyway, getting back to it, everybody testified. I testified in my own behalf on I believe it was the 3rd day.
Okay.
The first day was picking a jury. And one of the jurors they tried to put in was a drug enforcement agent over in some foreign country somewhere, and we got him struck from the jury. But that kind of thing was going on. But anyway, they pick a jury and they start going through all of it, and then the second day, I guess, I've decided this ain't looking good. Third day, I'm going to testify, but the night before, I'd made up my mind, this ain't happening. I'm going to have to go. Can't participate in their games.
That was one of the first questions. So this whole interview, like I said, what people keep talking about when they heard about this interview, and what I'm fascinated is just like kind of the psyche that goes into starting. Hey, I'm gonna go on the run when you're on the run, and that was kind of my first question. Was when did you decide this is it? This is what I'm doing. I'm gonna make a run for it.
I decided the end of the day on the second day of my trial. I decided, that's before I ever testified or anything. Let me say I decided, I prepared for it at that time.
Yeah.
I, at that time, drove a new Cadillac, okay? And I owned a van that I used in the liquor stores and whatever. For business, construction company, or whatever you want to talk about. So I took the van up the night before and parked it behind the restaurant that everybody eats at when they come out of the courthouse, okay? And just left it parked in the parking lot. Next morning, I drive my Cadillac up and I park it right in front of the courthouse and the restaurant, between the two. So everybody.
You weren't worried you were going to get a parking ticket?
No, it wasn't a no parking area. Yeah. I'm not like your father.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
But anyway, I parked my Cadillac out there where everybody can view it, and so we go in. It's my turn to testify. I'm through about half of my testimony, I guess. We take a break for lunch. I circle around with my lawyers, and they're telling me whatever they're telling me, things ain't looking good and whatever.
Did you think that your lawyer was really trying to help you out, or do you think he was working with the other people just?
Well, one of my lawyers, I'd had around me for 20 years or 30 years that would take care of things for me. I'm not going. One of them, the one that I had around for 20 or 30 years, has passed away now, so I'm not going to talk bad about him. And his son was the other attorney that. Do I think there was a conspiracy? I don't want to say that, but there could have been.
Could have been.
I really don't want to dig into that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
At this stage of the game anyway. But I did have, in my opinion, 3 good lawyers. And I still use the young one
to this day.
For things, and he's been, I guess he hadn't been out of law school very long when he joined the group to help get me out. And probably, if the truth was known, in my opinion, and I'm sure he had advice from the old dogs like you get sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But in my opinion, during the trial, he done a better job than the old dogs.
Yeah.
They all done well. Don't let me take nothing away from any of them. They all done well. Even though I lost, they done well. I think.
Yeah.
So you broke for lunch, Ron, and then what happened?
We broke for lunch, Joe, and as you well know, you and your brother and me went to lunch and sat at the table. You know what I mean? I think my ex-wife and stepson stayed at the courthouse, and whoever they didn't go to lunch. But you guys ordered a meal, and I ordered something to drink and told you I wasn't hungry, and sat there for a minute. At this point, I'd made up my mind because somebody had said that things don't look good. If you're going to do something, you ought to do it, It wasn't you or your brother. It was somebody in the courthouse. I can't remember who it was now. But anyway, so I'd made up my mind when we were walking over to the restaurant that I was going to go, but I couldn't share that information with you or your brother at the time because I didn't want you to be involved in any type of helping me or whatever, or my wife helping me or anybody. In other words, I protected, in my mind, I protected everybody around me not to be, in other words, I didn't share no information with anybody,
Yeah.
I guess is the word I'm looking for.
I remember, like it was yesterday, Ron, you saying you had to go back over to the courthouse to meet with your attorneys, and you got up and walked out the back door of the restaurant, which created a conversation with my brother and I. What's he going that way for? The courthouse is the other direction.
Okay. Well, I'd went into the bathroom, okay? And something I forgot to tell you, Joe, is the bathroom was in the middle of the building. There was no windows, you know what I mean? There was rooms on all four sides of it, you know, the dining room. And during the court proceedings, I'd noticed two guys that I didn't notice, that I didn't know who they were at the time, but I finally figured out that they had to be some kind of police officer watching me to make sure I didn't cut and run, okay? Well, after I'd talked to you and told you I was going to talk to my attorneys, and I don't know if you forgot or what, but I had said I got to go to the bathroom, okay? And the bathroom being in the middle of the building, I went back to the bathroom. One of the knowing now police officers come busting in the bathroom, which was all it was a commode and a sink in there, and I started laughing and asked him, "What, you think I'm crawling out the window?" You know, I kind of made a goofy joke with him, you know, and kind of laughed at him, you know. And he got all cocky and strutting back to the front of the building where he was sitting, you know.
Yeah.
I had no idea any of that was going on.
Huh?
I had no idea any
Right.
of that was going on. You're a lot more observant than what certainly I was.
And so I left the bathroom, and you know, I'm kind of peeping around the corner and watching him, you know, strutting back to the table like he done something, I guess. And so I went down the hallway in the back, and it was really funny because I knew the guy that owned the restaurant. He was back there in the back cooking and had a service window up there, you know. And when I walked past the service window, he looked at me, waved at me.
Now, is your heart like beating 1,000,000 miles per hour right now? Or are you cool? Or are you?
No, I'm cool because I had a story. If I got in the van, I was going to get cigarettes. So I got in the van in the back, and I sat there for about what seemed like an hour,
Yeah.
but was probably actually 60 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I sat there in the van and had a story that I come out here to get cigarettes. This is my van. You know, I'm not trying to do nothing. If anybody came, well, nobody came out the back door, so I cranked her up and headed out. You know, I was going to Chicago to try to pick up some phony IDs.
Which I'll show the viewers here in a second. I
Well,
guess.
them are not the ones that come out of Chicago. The
Okay.
ones that you've got.
Yeah.
Okay, them got made up in Pennsylvania. We'll get to Pennsylvania if we've got the time.
All
You
right.
know.
So the first place you drove to from that day, because I remember being back over in the courtroom and the judge said, "Well, where's the defendant?" And nobody could find you, and somebody said, "I think he's down there smoking a cigarette." They said, "Well, go get him."
Right.
They came back and said, "He's not there."
Right.
And the judge was a little upset.
I heard that he was.
Yeah, but he did ask everybody in the courtroom if anybody knew where he was, including my brother and I. And we
Right.
said no. We had lunch with him said he was coming back over to meet with his lawyers.
But on the way to Chicago, I was kind of snickering and laughing and to myself, thinking, I just wonder how pissed off this guy is now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but laugh about it. You know what I mean? But anyway, they hadn't put out no APBs on me or anything at this point, and
Well, they didn't know what kind of vehicle you were in or anything, did they?
not for
Because you
not-
left your Cadillac at the courthouse, right?
That's correct. And that was funny too. I mean, my ex-wife left it sit there for 3 days because she was scared to get in it and drive it home. And finally, you talk about funny, finally, my attorney got in it. You know what I mean? One of my attorneys, the old man that's passed away now, got in it to drive it off. And the prosecutor saw somebody in it, thinking it was me, alerted the police, and they pulled my attorney over in my Cadillac.
There they were thinking, oh, he hasn't left town but a mile down the road.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, here he is. Thinking they
But it
busted
did
the
sit
case
there
wide
for
open.
about 3 days. But anyway, I went to Chicago, tried to get some phony IDs. They all looked phony.
Yeah.
So I pushed on, went to a friend of mine's house in Milwaukee that used to work for me, old Tom Post, and he was a character boy. I mean, he get all worked up over everything. I think you remember Tom, Joe, if I...
Yeah, I think I remember meeting him when he was sort of a Don Knotts, Barney Fife type,
You're absolutely right.
only he wasn't in law
By the way,
enforcement.
the young viewers of this show will absolutely pick up on that reference.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey,
But-
Ron, can I stop just 1 second to ask you a question that you may or may not want to answer? Obviously, going on the run, did you have credit cards? Did you have cash money? What did you do?
Oh, that's a story too. I forgot about that. I'm up there testifying, okay? I had no credit cards. I had some, but I wouldn't take any because in my mind they could track
Trace
me
it.
with credit cards. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to tempt myself. So I had saved and had received money before I went on the run. Somebody else that I'd talked to about it had given me money to go on the run. So anyway, when I left Madison County to go on the run, I had $100,000 in my pocket.
So earlier that day, when you were on the witness stand giving testimony, you were
That's really funny. I had 50. I was wearing a suit coat that was probably too little for me to start with. Okay, I had 50,000 on the inside pocket here, another 50,000 on the inside pocket there, and I would turn like this, and the judge could see the 50,000 on this side.
Oh man.
So I'd turn like this, the other way, and the jury could see it, or in my mind they could see it. I don't
Yeah.
know if they could or not, but in my mind they could see it. So I'd try to pull my coat together, while I'm testifying,
Yeah.
and it just didn't work. But anyway, I took that. So I go up, I'm getting back to going to Milwaukee. I go to Tom Post's house, and he gets very dramatic sometimes, and he was funny. So I go in and I tell him, hey Tom, I laid down for a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, and got up and I said, well, I've got something I got to tell you, bud. I said, I'm a fugitive. I'm on the run. He said, what are you talking about? So I told him the whole story. He says, oh my God, what are we going to do? What the fuck? I said, well, this is what you do. FBI's going to be here. Somebody's going to be here tomorrow to talk to you.
now. What made you think that the FBI would know you went to Milwaukee?
Well, what caused that is head of the U.S. Marshals was Terry Delaney. So I called Terry Delaney.
You called the
from
marshal
Milwaukee, right?
for what purpose?
Well, I called Terry Delaney, which I knew him when he was a street cop, okay, in East St. Louis or Washington Park, wherever he was at. So I called him on the phone and I said, Terry, I just wanted you to know that my van is parked at such and such, whatever corner it was on, 14th and Monroe or whatever. If you know you want to send your agents up here and get it, you know, you can come up here and get it. I don't need it no more. And he, you know, he talked to me for a while. Ron, you got to give yourself up. We're going to get you. We'll find you. I said, I know you will, but this is what I know. I was looking at 90 years. I don't know how much time I got, if I got any yet, but I was looking at 90. 30 enhanced to 60 in another case, which was a bullshit case, for another 30, which is a total of 90 years. I said, every day I run, I've done screwed you out of a day.
Wow.
He says, we're going to get you. I said, I know you will. I know you will. So anyway, I hung up with him, and then I called my wife, knowing, or ex-wife, I think she was at the time, knowing that
They'd tap the line?
they would tap the line. That's correct. So I talked to her for about 10 minutes and told her, you know, baby girl, if they don't get me by daylight, I'll be in Canada.
By the way, real quick, we have one Laroon asking, so with 100K, who picked up the lunch tab?
Well, I'm sorry to say, but I'm sorry.
No worries.
I'm sorry to say, I believe it was your uncle and your dad. That's who I believe it was. But I wasn't there to know.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you're going to have to
that
ask
was the least of your worries
one
at
of
that
them.
point.
That's right.
Something that I am like really kind of fascinated with the idea is growing up. I don't know if you knew this, Ron. He for sure knows it, but I was never the best student. I was never the best student, and in 6th grade, I was doing poorly in one of my classes, and I knew that when you do poorly in this class, they'll call home and let the parents know that, hey, your kid's screwing up in class, blah blah blah.
Right.
And I knew they were gonna call home, and it was every single time at dinner when that phone would ring, you know, I'd shoot up. Now I couldn't say anything because I didn't want to let him know. I didn't want to say anything, and I didn't want to do it. But it was like every time, and I've kind of equated it as like the smallest beans compared to your situation of you can't tell most people what you're into, and when just like I heard that telephone ring, when you heard sirens, did you think they're coming for me?
Oh, if I even saw a cop car, I thought they was coming for me.
Yeah.
You know, and later on in the story, you'll be able to see that, you know,
So,
on
Ron,
some of my stories.
you left your van there. How did you get to Canada?
Well, number one, I didn't go to Canada. I done that as, in my mind, as a deterrent to get
Throw 'em
them
off.
thinking I'm going to Canada. So I told Tom Post, I told him, I said, Tom, it's time for me to go. I got to go. You know, what do you want me to do with this van? I said, I don't care what you do with it. You know, give it to the U.S. Marshals, drive it, do whatever you want.
Now,
I don't want it no
did
more.
you just personally want to stay in America, or did you think, hey, if I try to go across the border, there's a much better chance they get me?
That's the next story coming, Drew.
All right,
That's
go
the
into
next
it.
story coming. So after I led them to believe I was going to Canada, and I don't know if I saw it or if I've got it, but the next day in the Post it come out big letters, Goforth goes to Canada, and another article on me.
The Post, let me interject real quick again for the viewers' sake. When you mentioned that Tom Post was shocked when you told him you were a fugitive on the run, to say all of us that knew you were shocked was an understatement. When we woke up one morning and the headlines of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which is the major newspaper in St. Louis,
Right.
you know, Granite City man arrested, largest drug dealer and everything, and my phone was ringing off the hook with people saying, it's Big Ron, it's Big Ron, it's Big Ron. we couldn't believe it. We just
Right.
couldn't believe it. No, Big Ron, Big Ron.
Right.
So when you say later that the Post ran a story saying you're on your way to Canada, you refer to the St. Louis Post.
St. Louis Post-Dispatch. That's
True,
correct.
the big newspaper.
But when I hung the phone up from my ex-wife, I called a cab, got in a cab, went to the train station, okay, got me a train ticket to Brownsville, Texas, which is right on the Mexico border. I got these big ideas. I'm going to go to Mexico, and I got enough money I can live pretty good or start a business or do something. You know, I mean, my mind's running 90 and a 30 by now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm fucked up. You know, so I get down there. I get down there in Brownsville, and at this time, and I can't remember the guy's name, but there was a very well-known dressmaker in New York that had been killed, and at the same time, they had had a $18 million armor car robbery around all the different parts of the country, but they was really watching the border. They was making everybody get off the buses that was going across the border and checking everybody that was walking across the border, and it wasn't like it was when I'd been down there previously and kind of looking around, you know. I mean, you know, I'm staying in a hotel room up there about 2 weeks. So now I got this big idea. They're checking the border. I'll get me a coyote, take me across the border. And, you know, and I met with one and told him I'd get back with him. You know, he'd give me a price and what it would cost to get me across the border and everything. And so and then I got to thinking, you know, maybe I give this guy too much information. I mean, you know, that I'm wanted and I'm wanting to go to Mexico and whatever. I don't even know what I told him anymore. But then I got it in my head, these suckers are going to get me out there in the desert, shoot me, take my shoes off, make me walk back, take my money away from me, whatever, you know, put me in the back of a truck with a bunch of other people trying to cross the border or what, you know. I mean, my imagination just went crazy.
I imagine it's hard to when you're in that situation on the run, it's hard to trust anybody, let alone somebody like that. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. You know, I never met the guy before in my life. You know,
he might turn me in, like you said, he might shoot me, steal everything I got. Yeah,
you know. So anyway, I decided maybe this ain't a good idea. Maybe I ought to go do something else, you know. So I landed in several places on my way to Pittsburgh. I had another friend in Pittsburgh that I'd met and done some things with, construction things, you know, and whatever. So I decided I'm going to go to Pittsburgh and look this guy up, you know. And
Took a train there?
Took a train. Most of my travel, sometimes a bus, but most of my travel up to this point was by train. I really like traveling on the train.
Staying in a hotel in Brownsville and/or everything, you're just paying cash for everything
That's what I
as
was
you go?
doing. That's correct. Yeah, just paying cash. So anyway,
You're on your way to Pittsburgh
on my way to
the train.
Pittsburgh. Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I go to Pittsburgh, and I've got the guy's address. So I get a cab and I go out to his house. The house is vacant. Oh fuck! What do I do now? You know, I mean, and so I, start looking around. The cab driver, that I've got, I've done laid some kind of bullshit story on him that I had worked for the guy and whatever. And so the cab driver says, well, get out and go knock on some doors, ask some of the neighbors, Somebody got to know something about this guy. And so I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. So I do. I get out and I knock on the next door neighbor, and he said, "No, they moved out. I don't know where they went." So a lady across the street from him said, "Are you looking for these people?" I'm not going to mention any names at the time. "Are you looking for these people?" I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I am." Said, "Well, I don't know where they went. I know they moved out. But this is what I know. His wife works at the hospital. And, you know, you can call the hospital and ask to speak to her. And I know she works in the billing department or wherever it was. And you can get a hold of her. And that way maybe you can get a hold of him, you know." And so I said, "Okay." So I did. I called the hospital, and you know, I guess my buddy had pulled some shenanigans with the city inspectors, or not finished work sometimes, or whatever. I don't know what he'd done, but she was reluctant about giving me any information. I said, "Look, this is Ron Goforth. I'm a friend of your husband.
So you used your name.
Take my phone number," which I had a cell phone at the time. "Take my phone number, give it to him. If he don't want to call me, fine, and if he does, so be it." So about 2 hours later, the phone rings. I answer the phone, and it's my buddy. I said, "Let's get together and have a cup of coffee. You know, I'm in Pittsburgh, and see what happens." So he says, "All right, you know, we can do that." So I get with him and I tell him what's going on. You know, fuck, I'm on the run. You know, need a place to go. You know. So anyway, I get this hotel here in Pittsburgh, motel. I'm sorry, not a hotel, but a motel in Pittsburgh, and I really like it. You know, it's got a swimming pool, and it's got a restaurant and a bar and everything. You know, so you know, I'm getting pretty comfortable. You know, getting friendly. Everybody likes me down there, and I think, you know, boy, I got, you know, shit, I'll just stay here for a while. And you know, my friend would run me around a little bit and help me, and then he helped me get a car in a fictitious name. You know, he knew some crooked car dealer, which I don't know who it is anymore, but you know, they built a car, got me a temporary tag on it, and now I had a car to drive around in. You know.
Did you have a fake driver's license? Obviously, it must have said something other than Ronald Goforth.
I did not at that point have a fake driver's license. Okay. But I got the car, and I didn't have a driver's license, to be honest, the best of my memory. And so I'm driving around. Now, y'all gonna get a kick out of this, but I'm here to tell you that this is the honest to God's truth, and I've told this story 100 times. It's hard for me to believe, but it's a true story. I'm driving around around Pittsburgh, the outskirts of Pittsburgh. I'm driving around in this new car that I got with temporary tags on it, and I'm going through a school zone. Speed limit was 15 miles an hour. I never will forget it. It was 15 miles per hour in the school zone. And so I get almost through the school zone, and I look up, there's a cop.
You obviously slowed down to 14.
At least, probably. But I look up in my rear view mirror, here's a cop behind me with these red lights on. I'm thinking, oh, shit. It's over. You know, my heart starts beating. You know, he pulls up, he gets out of the car, I get out of the car, and now you can't shut me up. I'm going 90 and a 30. I'm going 100 miles an hour.
You're
know,
just spitting
officer,
words out to fill the fear almost.
I guess.
Yeah,
Officer, I don't know what the problem is. I just bought this car. It's got new tags on it. I know they're good. I know I'm in a school zone, and I know I wasn't speeding, and I just got to Pittsburgh, and I'm driving around trying to figure out where to go and find my way around, and I'm going to build a house out here on, I don't know what all I told him, but you couldn't shut me up. You know what I mean? And he says, what's your name? I said, my name's Ron Franklin. And he said, well, Mr. Franklin, I want you to have a seat in my car because you got 2 tickets coming. I said, oh my God, 2 tickets? What have I got 2 tickets coming for? I wasn't doing nothing, officer. He said, you just have a seat in my car. And so I opened the door and sat down in the car and almost busted his windshield out with my heart.
I was just
beating.
just about to say that you actually got inside the car and
I
it was
did.
Was it the back seat?
No, in the front
In the
seat.
front seat, okay. So
Sat in the front seat. And he says, we're running a promotion out of Pittsburgh. And for anybody that's caught doing the speed limit in this school zone is going to get 2 tickets to the Harlem Globetrotters, and hands them to me, and never ask me my name again. Never ask me for a driver's license.
He rewarded you for being a good driving citizen.
That's right.
And it's
2
like
tickets to the Globetrotters.
That's right.
And it's like,
Oh
of
my
course you
gosh.
were being a good driving citizen because you were trying to avoid that situation to
That's
begin
right.
with. Yeah.
And he says, you have a good day, Mr. Franklin. I said, okay, sir. I thank you. And I hope I see you there, you know, at the basketball game.
Ron, as you walked back to the car, had you soiled your pants or anything like that? You were so
I didn't
worried?
soil my pants, I don't think. I wasn't going to stop and look, that's for sure.
You got in the car and quickly
But my
drove.
legs were so weak, I didn't think I'd make it back to the car, to be honest with you. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, but I got in the car, and I just sat there breathing, waiting for him to leave. And eventually he pulled out around me, and he went up the road, and I made a right turn, and
Here he was probably thinking, I made that guy's day.
That's
I just
right.
made his day, and meanwhile you're sweating,
well,
panicking.
he really made my day.
Yeah. When he let you when he let you go, yeah.
That's right.
That's unbelievable. But
But,
Ron,
So obviously you didn't go to the ball game, huh? The Globetrotters game.
That's correct.
with all the other people obeying the speed limit. One thing I want to get to, because you mentioned your fake name, and I think it's so cool, is you actually brought some of the fake IDs and aliases and names that you had used, and I want to show the people here. There's a couple of old birth certificates. You carried certificates of baptism, too.
Right.
Yeah. Just
Because-
Ron, explain, because I, for one, want to know, how do you get those? How did you get those and fill them out? Where do you find such a thing?
Joe, to be honest with you, I don't remember if I printed them on the computer in Pittsburgh or if I bought them someplace that I'd run across, you know, I'm looking for phony IDs or
And
whatever.
somebody said, hey, I can get you a certificate of baptism, a birth certificate, I can get that stuff for you and
Blanks.
cost you X
They
amount of
could
money.
get me blanks.
I
Yeah, I
see.
think one of these. This one is both with the name Ronald Glasgow, which I've noticed was on a lot of them. Ronald Glasgow.
One of my old school teachers.
Glasgow, because I was going to ask you. So we have, by the way, there is a comparison of one that was done up and then a blank birth certificate that you had ready, and you had a bunch of blank certificates kind of ready to go. But I was noticing, here's with your Home Depot IDs, and you said you didn't even work at Home Depot ever. You just got a bunch of ID tags, basically.
Well, or printed them up on the computer. I don't remember. You know, I think I'd seen one and I tried to copy it, you know what I mean, and then fill it out. And at that time, I mean, I'm ignorant on a computer now, and I was really ignorant back then. I mean, you know, everything was trial and error, and spent days trying to perfect something.
Here's the thing,
you
Ron,
know.
is, I mean, I actually held them in my hands. These are just scanned pictures of them. I held these in my hand. I mean, they were legitimate. I asked you, hey, do you have some guy that did all these? And you said no, that you'd done these on your computer. I mean, there's a few Glenn Bows on here.
Brother-in-law.
brother-in-law. I had noticed on, I think it's the Ron Hunt card.
Okay.
Ron Hunt, the store manager was the same name as David Mitchell, which was another alias you
Right.
used. So
Daniel Mitchell.
or Daniel, that's right, Daniel Mitchell,
Right.
which is I think at that one in the bottom left
Right.
corner. And I thought that was funny that it was Ron Hunt, but then your store manager was also you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Ron, not to interrupt, but go back to after you won your Globetrotter ticket, you went back to the hotel, and what happened there?
Well, I went back to the hotel, and I'd been told by phone when I was making my phone calls back home, and that's another story I need to tell too. I really thought I was slick on making phone calls. Okay, let me go to that first. When I left, I had targeted 20 payphones that would accept incoming calls. Okay? And I listed them 1 through 20. Okay? And then I left a pager with my ex-wife. Okay? And if I wanted to talk to somebody, I would punch in, send her a message on the pager 12-1, which meant go to phone 12 at 1 o'clock. Okay? And so, I thought I was pretty slick, and they got through all that, and
Ron,
finally,
again, excuse me one moment, but this being a show that started originally as a generational debate, do you have to think you should explain to the younger people what a payphone was, what a pager was, our version of texting? And
Yeah, the payphone is the area of the building that's collecting dust and a bunch of cobwebs and everything else like that. It's those boxes where all the cobwebs and stuff. But I think the younger generation at least knows what a payphone is.
do you think they know what a pager is?
I
You know
think they
that-
also know what a pager is, but I would say only because of medical dramas where they're always seeing nurses and
Okay.
doctors check their pagers.
Okay.
Otherwise, that would be way over their head.
Okay.
But yeah.
But anyway,
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ron.
that-
Go ahead. I
that's
want to
how-
hear the rest of this
That's
story.
how I made contact with everybody, and I'd bought this computer to make these phony
Yeah, I'll show a couple
IDs and phony whatever. Everybody liked me at this motel that I was staying at, which I really liked, and so in talking to people back here home, in the St. Louis area, they was telling me they're announcing on the radio that you're going to be profiled on America's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, and such date. That date would come and go, and I wasn't on there, And then they get back on the radio again, and TV. Well, Ron Goforth's going to be profiled on America's Most Wanted. So I'm staying at this hotel, or motel, and at that time, America's Most Wanted come on Saturday night. So I would go down to the bar, and they got a TV down at the bar, and whatever channel America's Most Wanted was on, if there was a football game or a basketball game on another channel, I'd say, turn that over to the other channel, and let's watch the football game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no problem, Ron. We'll do that. And they'd turn the channel over, and I'd say, I'll be right back. I gotta run upstairs for a minute. So I'd go upstairs and watch America's Most Wanted to see if I were profiled or not, because I'm going to pack it up and go if I am. And so I never was. I didn't even see that. It didn't even come on like it was supposed to ever when I changed the channel on the TV. So anyway, I'm still pretty comfortable, and I've got this maid comes in, makes my bed every day, and washes my dishes, whatever her duties were, to clean the room, vacuum or whatever. And she says, "Oh, I see you got a new computer." I said, "Yeah, I use it in my work. I'm in construction," and I laid some kind of bullshit story on her, and she says, "My husband just bought a new computer, and I see you've got a a copier or scanner or whatever you call. Said, I don't think he got one. Would you mind if he come by and you guys chat a little bit and have him look at your computer? I said, because he stays up all night, she said. This guy stays up all night looking on the computer. I said, yeah, that'd be fine. I don't mind at all, you know. And so she says, well, I'll have him stop by on the way into work tomorrow. I said, okay, no problem. You know, and I'm not thinking nothing of it, you know. Knock, knock, knock on the fucking door. I open the door, and who's standing there? My maid and her husband, who's in full dress uniform as a Pennsylvania state cop. Okay?
Oh my God.
That's what I said. Oh my God.
So your heart just went from like normal to absolutely
That's
insane.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, talking shit. You know, I'm building houses and whatever, and I'm sure my body language was giving me away, you know, because it caught me off guard.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he chatted for about 10 minutes and said, well, I gotta go to work. I said, okay, well, you have a good day. Well, I think I was in my car before he got in his, because I was leaving town, you know.
Yeah.
You knew when he said he had to go to work, he was going somewhere to call for the rest of the troopers to come in there. And
you know, Joe, to be honest with you, I don't think he recognized me, and I don't think he knew that I was wanted for anything. And this is speculation on my part, okay? But I believe that he went back to the police department and started digging and found me. And according to the U.S. Marshals, 4 hours after he was at my door, the FBI was beating on the door wanting to know where I was at.
but
Now,
you
that
were
was
in
according
your
to the U.S. Marshals after I got caught, okay?
but you were in your Globetrotter's car and gone by then.
You got that right, heading south.
With 2 expired tickets.
With 2 expired tickets, that's right.
Ron, I'm sorry, Drew. Did you tell me somewhere you ended up in New York City?
I did. I think I left there and went to New York before I went to Atlanta.
And what was your thinking there?
Well, my thinking about going to New York, boy, that's a hell of a story, too. I took a train to New York, okay? I think I dumped the car in Pittsburgh where I bought it, and I took a train to New York after I got to thinking about it. I give it to my buddy and told him, here, you just go sell it or do whatever. And so anyway, I took a train to New York thinking several things. One, I'm back close to Canada. It's been several months since they made a big deal and found out that I wasn't in Canada. They'd been chasing me through different places and whatever. So anyway, I went to New York thinking, well, big city, get lost, buy some phone cards, which, by the way, at that time was charging 25 cents a minute for a phone card, which is almost free now. But anyway, and I remember thinking when I saw them for 16 cents a minute, that's one hell of a deal. I'm going to get me a whole stack of them.
So you get off the train in the middle of New York City.
I get off the train, I'm starting to look around, and you know, biggest city I ever saw. Guys running down the street with carpets on their shoulders that looked like they was 20 foot long, you know, and one thing and another. Tried to check in 2 or 3 hotels. They wouldn't let me check in anywhere around the train station because I didn't have a credit card. In other words, got to be on plastic or you can't stay here. So I'm wandering around, I'm wandering across the street, and here's this gal out there, drunk, high, whatever, you know, out in the middle of the street. And, you know, I'm just going about my business. She turns around, looks at me and says, hey, big boy, you want a date tonight? I said, no, baby girl, I got to pass. You know, I respectfully declined, you know, but I got to pass on that. She said, by God, I'm glad, because I didn't want to fuck no fat motherfucker like you anyway.
Oh my God.
Oh, after you so politely declined, no
Right.
thank you, or whatever.
That's what she said.
It's bad
Well,
business.
that made me
You
make a U-turn
might
right
have been
there,
able to win
head
him
right
over,
back
but-
to the train station, say New York ain't the place for me to
There
be.
you go. There you go.
But I did buy some cards to make phone calls with.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
By the way, somebody in the chat just said that I hear that one every week.
Hear what?
That I hear what she told you once a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That
Okay.
That's a burning monk.
But
said.
don't
We have
identify who that was
Oh,
that said
well,
that.
But one thing I wanted to ask, kind of moving back just a little bit, and it kind of goes with your story at the motel.
Okay.
Obviously, whatever name you had used, did you know at certain points, hey, I can't use this name anymore. They're on to this name. I got to switch to a different name, or was it just that you were going all over the place with them?
No, it would just depend. There was no thinking behind it.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, today I'll be Ron Franklin. Okay, I'll put my card on. And
Gotcha.
that's who I am.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'll be Ron Hunt. You know, the next day, you know, depending on where I was at. Now, staying at the hotel, I kept the same name the whole time I was there, which I believe was Ron Franklin at the time. You know, at the hotel or motel.
So the nice young lady in New York City gave you a taste for how rough New York City was in those days, encouraged you to go back to the train station. Did you say, now where the heck am I going to go? Or what was your thought process, and
no,
where did you go?
You know, I think, and remember, and keep in mind, this is over 20 years ago, okay? So, you know, I'm trying to recall a lot of the details, and hopefully I've got them all right, you know. I'm sure it's not verbatim word for word, but, you know. But, no, Joe, kind of, when I left originally, had an idea. I'll try this. If this don't work, I'll try that. If that don't work, then I'll go here and I'll, you know, in my mind, I had a list of people that I felt would help me if I needed help, you know, and I didn't need no financial help naturally for that year, but maybe whatever, help me buy a car as an example, or help me
So you leave New York City and go where?
Atlanta, Georgia,
By train.
by train. Go to Atlanta, show up at a good friend of mine's house by cab, Danny Mitchell, who used to be a East St. Louis police officer. Back
And a
in the
personal
day.
friend.
And a personal friend, and he was living with his daughter. And if you read the newspaper articles, you'll see that at one time he was involved in some dope dealing, or got caught with some dope and done some time. So he wasn't a police officer no more. So anyway, I show up, good-looking daughter, about 10 years younger than me, sweet. You know,
Uh-oh.
really liking her.
I could just see that smile. I don't know if
You
that
know.
caught on camera,
Yeah.
that little smirk you just got.
Yeah, but anyway, they told me, you know, yeah, you can stay here, and I remodeled their back porch and had my own room, and while I was there, and it's kind of a base, you know, to get along with, and anytime I'd have to call home and make a phone call, I'd drive 100 miles into Ohio, and U.S. Marshals, I used the same phone up there 2 or 3 times at a truck stop that I didn't realize that they had picked up on. And, you know, they run them phone numbers back and forth, incoming, outgoing, you know, and all that. And so they figured out I'd been in Ohio. U.S. Marshals told me this after I got caught. We got within 3 minutes of you. We drove past you, not knowing it, in the truck stop at the time. We didn't know we drove past you.
Wow.
by figuring the times on the phones and the times that they arrived at the truck stop. They figured out that they had only missed me by about 3 minutes.
Wow.
In Ohio. And anyway, I got pretty friendly with my friend's daughter and really liked her, and she was a nurse at the time, and in one of the hospitals down there, and it got to the point that her dad was very sick, and
Your friend was sick?
yes, he had colon cancer, and from the time they diagnosed him till the time he died was less than 4 months.
Jesus.
And I was there the whole time. When I first got there, he seemed to be okay. You know what I mean? And then he kept getting worse. I'd take him to the doctor. I'd help him get dressed. I'd put his shoes on for him. I would do whatever it took.
And you had told him you're on the run.
Yes. Both of them, him and his daughter. And so, you know, they knew I was on the run, yes. And I'd use their camper once in a while if I thought things was getting too hot, and I'd go camping for a couple weeks. And, you know, and she always, you know, the only thing she wanted out of me, be here when I come home from work. I'll cook dinner, I'll do whatever, but, you know, she wanted me to be there. So, make a long story short, instead of driving 100 miles, I start driving 50. Instead of driving 50, I start driving 20. Instead of driving 20, now I'm, you know, so I can go make my phone calls and be back to the house,
Basically,
for lack of a better word, for her
mm-hmm.
and her dad, okay? You know, I start going to the truck stop that's a mile away.
Basically slipping up on your discipline that you'd set in your mind
correct.
of, yeah.
That's right. And getting lazy, you
mm-hmm.
know, and wanting to come back. And they run a profile on me, figured out I'd use that truck stop 2 or 3 times, and set up a surveillance in the truck stop. And
Well, now let me get back to something that I've lost. Were you on America's Most Wanted?
oh,
Or how
yes.
did that come up? And did you see the program yourself?
I did
Where
see
were you
the
at?
program, yeah. I had been there about a month, I guess.
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta, when the program aired for the first time. Okay? Now, Danny and his daughter had a really nice house. They had a swimming pool in the backyard and whatever. You know, I mean, it was really a nice house, and she took care of all of it and whatever. So I'm sitting out by the pool with her, watching America's Most Wanted when they profiled me drinking a beer. I'm drinking a beer by the pool, and they profiled me on America's Most Wanted.
That's crazy.
And she just cracked up. She said, "Boy, I'm glad that," and she had 2 kids. She said, "Well, you know, I'm not glad that you was profiled, but I'm glad that I know the truth now that you know you was arrested for drugs and not child abuse or
mm-hmm.
something crazy,
yeah.
you know, because she didn't know me. Danny knew me all my life, and I'm sure she took his word at everything I'd done. But I remember
You,
her,
Ron, had never been accused, charged, or anything with any type in your entire life of any type of violent crime.
I had never had a speeding ticket when I got arrested for trafficking cocaine.
So, you know, if it was me, I'd have panicked. I'd have been afraid to go to the local grocery store thinking somebody would see me. What'd you do after you saw yourself
Well,
on
you
America's
know,
Most Wanted?
It's really funny. I met a friend of Danny's one time who come by to see Danny or something. And so after they profiled that, the next day this friend of Danny's calls Danny, my friend, and says, "Your buddy was on America's Most Wanted last night." And Danny said, "That's impossible. I know better. I've known this guy for 30 years and,
mm-hmm.
you know, trying to blow it off." And he said, "No, I'm telling you, this guy was on America's Most Wanted." Now, Danny, I'm not going to say anything to anybody, but I thought you ought to know. This guy is on America's Most Wanted. Danny said,
he knew,
"You ain't
yeah.
never going to make me believe it," you know.
And Danny told you that?
Yeah,
So did you run get your suitcase and figure you'd better pack up, or?
wanted to, but old girl talking me out of it.
Oh,
You know,
oh no! I
old
know
girl
where this
talking
is
me out
going,
of it.
Ron.
Yeah,
Real quick, Ron, because he like kind of what he said. We all got egos, and if I'm on the run now, I know, obviously, America's Most Wanted just makes it so it's that much easier to get caught. But did you, for a second, feel like, man, I'm big deal now. I'm on America's Most Wanted.
only when I went to prison I used that
As
as a big
as a
deal.
big
When I
deal.
went to prison,
Mhm.
okay, which
Got you some clout.
got me some clout coming in the door.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was known by a lot of prisoners from running a nightclub that had lived in Granite City that had some clout in the prison that
Mhm.
that built me up also when I went to prison. But that's the only time that I ever
That you
tried to
felt.
use
Mhm.
America's Most Wanted, as a
So how long after that show was aired were you caught?
6 months,
Oh, it was quite some time.
right?
But they caught you basically because you got lazy to make
Good.
sure you was back with your girlfriend.
Yeah,
you stopped.
sometimes got to stop at home, snuggle up. You can drive the 100 miles tomorrow.
Right, whatever, but anyway, it
Tell
was,
that story, will you please?
which story is that,
The
Joe?
day
How'd
you got
you get
caught.
caught?
The day I got caught.
And where were you going? What were you doing?
Okay, I'd made several phone calls that day throughout the town. Okay,
Mhm.
go across town, make one phone call to a buddy, go across town, make another phone call to somebody. This particular phone call, I was calling my ex-wife, who was taking care of my mother, who was not in good health, and this wasn't helping matters. But I drive up, get out of the truck, like I own the place, walk in this truck stop, go downstairs to got a line of 8 or 10 phone booths, which is the only thing between them is just a little divider. They're not actually a phone booth, I guess, And so I sat down at the end down there, all the way down, by the way, at the end, and
You had been in that same place how many times before?
2, 3, maybe 4. I don't know for sure how many times. Never even thought nothing about it. At this point, I'm cocky. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
This is what, like a year and 2 months, is it in? 2 year
a
full
year and a month, maybe
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Mhm.
A year and a half, a month, whatever. So anyway, I sat down at the phone and make my phone call, and my ex-wife was at a McDonald's over in Centerville, okay, where she accepted the call. She picks it up. She says, "How you doing?" That's the only thing I heard her say. Somebody taps me on the shoulder, and I'm looking around. U.S. Marshal says, "Mr. Goforth, it's all over." And so I get up and
Heart
I said,
sink.
Where
you got the wrong person. My name's not Goforth. My name's Danny Mitchell.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, we need to see an ID." So I pull out this ID and I show it to him. He said, "No, you're Mr. Goforth." So now they wrestle me to the ground and they handcuff me.
Now they wrestled you to the ground because you fought with them and tried to run, or they
Not,
wrestled
not
you?
at this point. They just decided when they reach out to grab me, to handcuff me, I kind of pushed them back or jumped back or whatever. So anyway, now they all wrestle me to the ground and handcuff me, get me handcuffed, get me back on my feet. Say, "Okay, we want the keys to that truck you drove in." So I don't know what you're talking about, keys to a truck. I never drove in no truck. I walked over here. You're lying. Give me the keys to that truck. I said, "What don't you understand? I've got no keys." And he's going through my pockets and everything, pulls my money out, and and he says, "I'm going to tell you one more time, punk. I want the keys to that truck." And he bitch slaps me. pop, right upside the head. Man. Well, that just got my
He called
mouth.
you a punk and
Yeah,
smacked you upside the head?
smacked me upside the head. Yes, sir.
Then what?
And so that just got my mouth to going. From this point forward, it's all my fault, and I accept responsibility. Okay? I'm telling him, you know what? You need to go back to the academy because my old lady slaps harder than you do. You're nothing but a punk. And
While you're standing there handcuffed?
yeah.
Did anything enter your mind? Maybe that wasn't a good approach to take?
Well,
After
maybe he
it's
might
over-
let you go. He goes, you know what? You're right, sir. And does the handcuffs.
Well, I didn't think that, but after it was over, I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? So he gets me down, and one of them, I can hear the little U.S. Marshal saying, "Now, Mr. Goforth, I ain't got nothing to do with this," and this guy, he's punching me. This is for the dirty diapers I had to go through, and this is for lying to me over the keys. And every time he hits me, I'm telling him, you really need to go back because you are a punk. I said, is that the best you got? And so he showed me quick my old lady wasn't near as tough as I thought she was.
So, would it be correct to say they beat the living hell out of you?
They did. They roughed me up pretty good. Took me to a county jail. Next morning, took me to Fulton County Jail.
Now,
Now, when I say they beat the living hell out of you, they black your eyes, break your nose, bloody your nose, bust your teeth?
They didn't bust no teeth, and they didn't bloody my nose. And they didn't black my eyes, but they swelled my eyes shut. Okay? And they kept me down in Atlanta for a week.
The whole time they had you handcuffed?
Yeah.
And you weren't kicking at them, or
What do you mean?
in other words, the only reason they did that was because you verbally were
That's
harassing
right.
them.
That's what I believe. I believe that my mouth got my ass kicked. That's what I believe.
You weren't the first guy to ever have that happen, but
Still
I
not the
hate to
first
guy.
guy.
The marshals did it under
Right.
those circumstances.
Still not the
but
first guy.
It is what it is. Was I guess you could call it resisting arrest.
I'd hardly call resisting arrest standing there handcuffed, basically
Right.
getting after the guy after he slapped you and smacked you upside the head.
But I didn't push it. I thought about it and thought, if I'd have kept my mouth shut, yeah, they might have roughed me up a little bit, but not as bad as it got.
Ron, somebody in the chat brought this up, and I thought it's a good point. Whatever happened to sticks and stones? Shouldn't they just let that go on by?
If you're an honest cop, yeah. But as you well know, and I'm not.
What did the guy mean? I'm lost. What did the guy mean about you caused me to have to change dirty diapers? What I don't understand
what
that.
that caught up was when I first went on the run, they had to pick up all my trash that my ex-wife was throwing away, which I had 2 grandsons still crapping in their
I see.
diapers, and they had
I
to go
see.
through
Looking for clues.
looking for clues of
I
where I
got
was
it
at.
now. I got
I'm
it
sorry
now.
I didn't clarify that.
So he took that out on you with a few left hooks and
Yeah,
Uh,
I guess that shit stunk.
probably did.
Ron, we got one of the questions that has come up a couple of different times that people are wanting to know is basically, did you regret going on the run? To this day, do you wish that you hadn't done it? Do you say, no, it was my move that I made? And
No, I don't regret going on the run. I wished I'd have been a little smarter at the time. You know what I mean? But on the flip side of that coin, let me say this. I was glad I got caught.
yeah, just from the everyday mental pressure of
That's
it.
correct.
Yeah.
Get it over with.
Get it over with.
I was kind of thinking about the
And I didn't expect to get out of prison. I didn't know nothing about prison at the time. I had a bad heart to start with. Had a lot of things wrong with me, but I mean, it was almost a relief to get caught after I got home.
So they took you to Fulton County Jail, which is like Atlanta County Jail. What kind of place
it's
was
downtown
that?
Atlanta.
What kind of place was it?
Well, it was 10 stories high, okay? And in all 10 stories, as far as I could tell, I was the only white boy there. Everybody else was black. Inmates and staff, okay? Now, I've never been intimidated by blacks because I've ran liquor stores and
The East
played
St.
in
Louis.
crap games
Yeah.
in black neighborhoods, and and
You, Ron, were well respected and liked in the black neighborhoods. The
Uh,
worst of the black neighborhoods. They liked you and respected you, didn't they?
that is correct. Yes, or I believe it is. They showed respect anyway. But anyway, I went in, and you almost had to fight for a spot in the floor in the county jail, Fulton County. Half the sewers didn't work. It was screwed up. So I got this big idea. I'll sleep up here by the door. If something kicks off, the cops will come in, and they'll step over me and go take care of their business. Well, something kicked off. Two guys got into it, and the cops go in, get them, drag them out into the foyer, for lack of a better word, and tell them that they're going to sleep in the gym, which is open to the elements, and it was snowing that night, okay? And they're going to sleep in the gym, butt naked, with no blankets and no pillows and no mattress.
You mean they do a human rights violation like that in prison?
Well, that's what they was telling them. I don't know what
But
this
this
wasn't
was-
prison. This was a county jail.
Oh, county jail.
So
yeah.
this was black guards telling the two black men that got in a fight with each other that was their punishment?
That's right. That's correct.
By the way, I would have
And
thought
so-
being by the door, that just makes it so that's the first person they hit. As soon as they walk in the door, they're going to start hitting people. You might be the first one they take a swing at.
Maybe, but I'd get out of the way. I mean, if they'd have done that. But anyway, I'm by the door, and to make things worse, one of the black guys says, "I'm not taking my pants off and sleeping in the gym." And the guard says, "Oh yeah, you are. You might not know it yet, but that's what you're going to do." And so they argued a little bit, and he says, "Let me explain something to you."
This is the guard talking to the
Talking
inmate.
to the inmate. He said, "You see that white boy in there? If you don't drop them drawers and get to moving, I'm going to bring him out here and let him slap you around like you're his bitch." Now I'm ducking. I'm trying to slide
you're going,
behind the
sir,
door
no thank
somewhere,
you. Can somebody else do it?
And So they said it again, I guess, and I I'm got my head hung down. He said, "Go forth. Go forth." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Did you hear what I told this guy?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, I'm going to tell him one more time. And if he don't do it, I want to see you. You got anything to say about that, Mr. Goforth?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What's that?" I said, "I don't want to. But if I'm called, I'll come."
Now, Big Ron, and everybody calls you Big Ron, etc. Again, for the sake of the viewers, and then, you're quite a big man. In those days, even, how big were you, Ron? I mean, for him to say, "I'm going to have this guy come over there and beat the hell out of you if you don't do what I say," he had to look at you and go, "That guy's big enough to do it." How big were you?
I was pretty good size, and back then I was still a scrapper,
I mean, ex-Marine Corps and a few other
Right.
things,
Yeah.
and
Right. I still didn't want to do it.
oh, I understand
Don't think
that.
for a minute that
But I'm just wondering if that guy looked over at you and went, "That's no
well,
tiny
this is-
5'5",
this is-
150-pound guy."
This is
That
what I know. I was happy to see him drop them drawers and take them off. I'll tell you
Because that got him to do it. He dropped his pants and went outside in the snow.
Right.
Oh man.
And I
gosh,
think
Ron.
as a bottom rule, you're talking about human rights.
Yeah.
I don't think they were out there 10 minutes.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean?
Ron, this is what I also wanted to bring up. We got to wrap up the show, unfortunately, here soon. We have to bring you back at some point
Okay.
down the future. But you meant, I mean, I was joking about it, oh, of course they'd violate a human rights violation like that. But or rather, you spent, 12, 13 years in prison?
12 years to the day
12 years to the day.
on a 25-year sentence.
What if you could, because there's obviously the United States has such a huge prison population with commercialized prisons and everything else. What would you change anything about the prison system? Obviously, you can't just get rid of it completely because there are bad
I would
people out
change
there.
everything about the prison system.
Would you?
I say everything, at least 90% about the prison system. Your dad and I was talking before we come up here today, about not being able to smoke a Marlboro within 15 feet of your door, but you can come to your room and smoke marijuana in a lot of states now.
Yeah.
So you can smoke a drug, but you can't smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, 80% of the people that are locked up, in my opinion, are drug related.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I don't know the stats off the top of my head. But
Well, I
it
don't
is,
either,
yeah.
but are drug related. When I went to jail, I take that back. Let me think about this. Before I went to jail, they had 6 prisons in the state of Illinois. Okay, a few years before I went to jail. When I went to jail, they had 36 prisons in the state of Illinois. Tough on crime, gives everybody a job, you know what I mean? Helps the economy.
I mean, it's literally a business. You can go start your own prison, can't you?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And another thing about it, in my opinion, is, and I've lost my train of thought on that, but, to have, they lock people up for no reason. Oh, I know what I was going to say. When I was in prison, and I don't know what it is now, but when I was in prison, all the reading I'd done, 50% of the economy in the United States was drugs.
Mm-hmm. That's unreal.
That's something to think about.
Yeah. Plus, I think that just not only is it all the drug-related crimes that people, victimless crimes
Right.
and everything else like that, but is the system that is in place now of lock them in there, blah, 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 does that, in your mind, do anything for helping them become better people?
Not really. It gives me more contacts.
Yeah, exactly.
To
Gives you
be
more
honest
knowledge
with you.
about other crimes
That's
to
right.
commit and everything.
Drew, in what time we have left, pick out a couple more questions from the audience.
I'll open it up for some of these questions. Let's see. One person wanted to know, did they have to build more jails because of how big you were? You were Big Ron. They have to build more jails just to fit Big Ron. Some person wants to know, have you ever been in a mind prison? Let's see.
It is a mind prison when you go
Yeah.
into prison.
Yeah.
It's a whole new society that you're going into.
Yeah.
Ron,
You know what I mean?
in general, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because thank goodness I've never been in jail and hope I never ever do anything that would ever result in that. But I hear anybody that's ever been talk about how horrible it is and whatever you do, don't ever do anything to end up there. Do you concur with that?
Prison's not a good place to be for most people, okay? I was fortunate because of different things in my life. America's Most Wanted, people that was in the prison, and I always had good jobs, and I had fairly.
And you were a little older
I
at the
was
time, a
older,
lot
that's
of
right.
20-year-olds
You know.
and things.
Drew go in prison. First thing, somebody's going to try to pat him on the butt. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at his age, a good-looking kid. You know,
Oh, thank you, Ron.
you know, I mean, that's the way it is. And a lot of times it happens, and there's rapes.
But you were big enough to defend yourself,
I was, and had a good enough reputation
that they knew you'd do
that
it.
they knew I'd defend myself. Right.
A couple more questions from the audience, and then I have one question that I forgot I was gonna I wanted to ask you. First question is, did Ron ever have a prison gang or crew? Did you ever were associated with like a group of people in prison?
You're talking about? Are you talking about gangs
Yeah, sort of.
like Latin Kings? Or,
Yeah, sort of.
Or,
I think they want to know, did you ever join a gang while you were in prison, or
Okay.
were you big enough you could protect
in
yourself?
answer to your question, no. I did never join a gang. I was considered a neutron, and at one time the Latin Kings kind of took me under their wing because I made it very clear that I wouldn't join a gang and that I wouldn't comply to their way of life.
Gotcha. Thank you, Doge. You even lived for the question. Another person asked, what is Ron's thoughts on prison food? They said so bad, so clearly
It
they
sucks.
sucks, I would
Right.
imagine.
It's
Yeah.
all turkey.
Turkey.
You know, 90% of the food you eat in prison, when I was there, okay, was all turkey cooked 15 different ways by some poor son of a bitch that didn't know what a skillet looked like. You know, never done any cooking in his life, you know, with a guard standing over his shoulder that probably didn't know how to cook either, you know, telling him do this or do that, grind it up, you know.
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle, for that one. One question I had, just curious because I never get to ask anybody, is was there ever any rumors? Ever anybody approach you? Ever anybody saying, blah, 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 is thinking about escaping from here? This person's got a plan. This person's got this big plan to escape. Ron, do you know anything about, you know?
The short answer is yes. I've heard people plan to escape.
Mm-hmm.
Heard people talk about how they could escape and didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're locked up that long, you can't help but think about it sometimes. You know what I mean? Did I ever think about it? Yeah, I thought about it.
Yeah, of course you would.
Did
yeah.
I ever figure out how I could do it? I think I did. I never tried it, but I mean, you know, but I think I had a couple plans that would have worked. You know, what are you going to do? You're going to get out and they're going to come find you.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to drag you back. They're going to put you.
You're like, I've already been on that whole on-the-run business
right,
once.
in a higher security prison.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the bottom line. I mean,
Yeah.
Ron, when I was a young man going to college and you ran the local convenience store, gas station, etc., and I'll never forget one time you mentioning to me about Vietnam, and later from you running the corner place. As you mentioned, my brother Tom and I got to know you and became friends with you. But your one night very, I don't know how to describe it, heartfelt, your story about the day you left Vietnam and the circumstances of it, and what you did in Vietnam and what happened. Can we have you back for a show in the future, and would you be willing to talk about those things?
I would be willing to talk about them things, and in my opinion, them stories are every bit as exciting as this America's Most Wanted story is, if you think it's exciting.
Well, I don't think it's exciting, but it definitely makes you a fascinating, interesting person. But I personally, I could be wrong, but I personally think our viewing audience, as I remembered being, and even on a couple of occasions where I asked you to clarify things over the years, and you did, I was always on the edge of my seat thinking, I just can't believe that's what happened. That's how things went down. I just had.
You know what, Joe? I understand what you're saying because I lived it, and sometimes I have a hard time believing it went like it did. You know what I mean?
By the way, the chat loves you. They say, we love Ron. Ron is awesome. So plenty of support for you, Ron.
You better tell these people to be proper and polite. It's Big Ron.
Excuse me. Hey, everybody. It's Big Ron. It's Big Ron, everybody. But
and
no,
don't forget it.
Don't forget it. But like I said, yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing about me is what makes the America's Most Wanted and every story so fascinating is you hear so many stories, see so many documentaries about prison. I mean, every National Geographic, so many different channels have jail, prison this, prison that,
Right.
and then so many different documentaries about drug trafficking, blah, blah, blah. That part in the middle there when you're on the run is a very kind of untouched topic, and it's very rare that you get somebody that's actually lived it and been through it and felt it.
And I'm sure, Drew, that there's things that I have forgot to share with you. Not that I'm trying to hide it or anything like that.
I don't know,
you
Ron. It seems like you might be
20
trying to
years.
hide something.
No. Ron, we've got to have you back on the show. Drew, I'm sure you'll well publicize it. I think just for many of the viewers who, for whatever reason, didn't grow up right next to a steel mill where you had to be rough and tough in order to survive, who didn't go to Vietnam, who didn't experience all the things you did, who didn't come back and open up grocery stores, convenient marts that otherwise no one else would dare do in very distressed neighborhoods. There's a lot more about your life that's incredibly fascinating. You got to have him back, Drew, to tell about some more of these things.
Well, we'll absolutely have you back as soon as we can. We, unfortunately, can you come to Vegas next couple of weeks? But
I don't know. You paying the way?
yeah, well, we'll definitely have you back sometime soon, Ron. Honestly, It was an absolute pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Everybody, Big Ron is incredibly fascinating. I know your big tagline for our show is average, ordinary, and I think he's a little bit
Common, average, ordinary, incredibly fascinating people. And, you know, I met Ron thinking he was the ordinary, average manager of the gas station where we bought a six-pack of beer on Friday night and bought $2 worth of gasoline to run you all weekend in those days. And I grew to find out, mainly because of his background and then his Vietnam heritage and all these things. I knew him, as I say, when we picked up the paper about Ron Goforth, major drug dealer. It can't be. It just can't be. But I know for a fact there's thousands of people out there, and hopefully in 2 weeks, this person that can tell you incredible stories about Las Vegas and et cetera. And yeah, I think there's a huge audience, and hopefully everybody will tell everybody that Say What show that's on at 8 o'clock Eastern time on
8
the
o'clock
15th.
Eastern on the 31st this month of August. By the way, Ron, you're killing it with the hat. And a few last things from the chat. Chat's going crazy. As always, they always want to see Onion the Cat. That's way down the line. He'll be a guest in about a year or so. And then, Ron, they want you to beat Putin up because they say Big Ron could beat Vladimir Putin up. So, I don't know why, but that's what they're saying.
Well, do I have to take my shirt off like he
Yeah,
does and
exactly.
ride my white horse in?
Yeah,
That's what I want to know.
Exactly. But no, my dad is right. On August 31st, which is a Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we will be live from Vegas. My dad will not be here to hear all of my hot fire comedy takes. But my sister Gigi will be hosting with me the show. Thank you, everybody, so much for checking out the show tonight, especially the people that contributed in on the chat and everybody and asking questions. Thank you so much. You can catch always the live shows right here on this Twitch channel. You can catch this replay as well as replays at the other shows at 1530 Productions on YouTube. And Big Ron for president, people are saying. People are saying Ron's too cool for school. I think that's the show. Ron,
Okay.
tip of the cap to you.
And we
There you
will
go.
have Ron back.
And we absolutely will have Ron back sometime soon. So thank you, everybody, very much. And have an excellent night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Are we off?
We're off the air.